We interrupt your program to issue a severe warning for an impending emergency making its way to your area. We urge you to be watchmen of the times and to be prepared with the essential knowledge and supplies for the wake of the final hour.
Welcome to the Final Hour podcast, coming to you from the original Living Word Christian Center out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. My name is Jim Hammond. This is John Gapp, Lonaiah Farrell, and we have the JD.
JD.
Producing today.
That's right.
And we're going to start you
He's
off.
the only one who gets a sound when his name is read.
I know.
Weekly.
Because he's in charge of the
I
sounds.
mean,
He is.
when you got that.
Okay.
We're going to start you off with the World Economic Forum openly,
They're back.
Saying those who submitted to COVID lockdowns, they will also accept social credit scores and carbon calculators. COVID-19 was the test of a social responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
A huge number of unimaginable restrictions for public health were adopted by billions of citizens across the world. There were numerous examples globally of maintaining social distancing, wearing masks, mass vaccinations, and acceptance of contact tracing applications, i.e. 6 feet, for public health, which demonstrated the core of individual social responsibility.
But hold on really fast. Just thinking about all the rules, the stupid rules, like if you went to a grocery store, you could only go down an aisle one way. And if you ever went down the wrong way, you literally had a Karen yelling at you, like, go the opposite way.
COVID Karen.
Like, yes, COVID Karens. There really were. But I'm just saying, think about that. And 6 feet apart. Like, remember they started to put dots because people would be like, you're too close. Just the rules at that time.
Yeah.
And everyone obeyed them.
The World Economic Forum isn't even hiding the fact that they're saying due to the fact that billions of people worldwide all voluntarily submitted themselves to hefty COVID-19 related restrictions, practices, all that stuff, death of the handshake, everybody going on Zoom calls.
Shelter in place.
Job closures. Payment forbearance, curfews, lockdowns, isolations, quarantines, all of this, masking, social distancing. The World Economic Forum is now publicly stating that this pandemonium was just a test of social responsibility and that these same people will accept a social credit score system. This was published on September 14th. The WF published an article called My Carbon, an approach for inclusive and sustainable cities, written by Kunal Kumar, Mission Director of Smart Cities Mission and Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs of India. And listen, it's pretty wild that people just don't understand, a social credit score and carbon calculators, you say, what are they going to do to us? They're going to ruin your life, is what's going to happen. And so, some of the things that will happen is they'll be telling you when you can and cannot drive your car. And if you drive your car too much, your gas car, you use too much gas, the restrictions in other areas of your life will go up. They'll tell you when you can and can't have your lights on in your house, how much water, just like we reported either Norway or Sweden is telling people, they should shower together now, right? And those mandates, those suggestions to save water, those suggestions, they will become mandates.
And you know what the sad thing is people will take that as normal. Remember the one prime minister, I don't know where it was somewhere out or in the eastern continent, and he was telling people to use washcloths instead of taking showers to save on climate. But it's just interesting that these people are openly saying, because everybody complied so well with everything that we did during COVID, which was, there were some ridiculous things these people will be more up. So they're just slowly, because they're slowly giving us back our freedoms. You see all the quarantine camps, which is very interesting. being shut down, like the one in Victoria, Canada, that was all over social media when they were putting people in there for no reason, just for being around somebody. That one just closed. It's just, they just closed it this week.
Finally.
Right. But why are they closing all these COVID camps all of a sudden? It's just, it makes me wonder why.
It was, as of October 1st, COVID wasn't a deal anymore.
Yes, it went away.
It was
even though
it was done.
They still have the camps, though.
They still have.
And they will be
Whether
used.
they're going to use it for COVID or not, it'll be used.
Trust me, the camps will be used. Obama started building, quote, FEMA camps.
Yeah.
You should Google that, where these FEMA camps are located way back when. Sorry, I had a minor freak out with all my...
We saw, it's all right.
with
your
I
papers?
don't think you have to... There's a lot of organization that comes into play here.
But can I just say one thing about the World Economic Forum?
Yes.
They put everything they want to do out there in front of everybody.
Right.
So when you try and explain to somebody what they're trying to do and people think you're ridiculous and it's a conspiracy theory, it's right there in front of us. They tell you what they're going to do before they do it for years.
And
years.
It is right out in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's almost like because they telegraph it and they say, this is what we want to do, people take it less seriously.
Right.
I don't know why, but
that's a good point, because they do.
It is right there. We want the population of the world to be 500 million people. We want
can I
this
say?
and that. Well, guess what? Everything that they are trying to execute throughout the world, through all of their people in different countries or governments.
Yeah, I was just going to say, me and Jim were looking at that today. All the people involved in the World Economic Forum.
Believe what they're saying, because they're trying to push and get to what they have already said they're going to do.
And what people don't understand is, who are these people?
Yes.
And so I was trying to... I've actually got a piece that I'm putting in on Saturday night at the service where I'm trying to explain these people run the world. These people are running media.
Yep.
They're running technology. They're running the bank system. They're running the credit card system. They're running the newspapers. You can see them listed. IBM, Microsoft, all their chairmen, executive vice presidents. I saw, what did we see? We saw
Pepsi,
MasterCard. We just went
LinkedIn.
Three A, B, and C. People with the last names of A, B, and C, and we didn't even. It was
there's 2,000 names on the list.
2,500 world leaders. These are the leaders of the world that are planning this for you, America, and
the world, not just America. But
but America's their major problem.
Right.
They've got to get rid of the capitalism in America, and so on another note, nuclear war. We're just going to run through a timeline of 12 historic events that really all happened in the past. It would be 14 or 15 days. The summer was kind of slow, stable time. But if you really look at what's gone on, September 21, Joe Biden gives a major speech at the United Nations calling for a creation of a Palestinian state. Exactly 1 week after Biden's decision, the U.S. was hit by one of the worst natural disasters in our history. September 22nd, Israeli Prime Minister, who they are having elections.
Yeah.
So he's not in there for much longer. Lapid also gives a major speech at the United Nations calling for the creation of a Palestinian state. And their government is, that's a toss-up right now, where they're going to wind up, the Israeli government. September 23rd, the storm that will become known as Hurricane Ian is designated Tropical Depression 9, which I think it got up to a... What did it get to?
3?
Category 3?
I think so.
And September 23rd, voting began to determine those territories if Russia was going to formally annex those territories, when we all know that voting was a scam. The official White House website posted an alarming statement which threatens to impose additional swift and severe economic costs on Russia for holding these referendums. The 26th of September, the Nord Stream pipeline is sabotaged. Explosion measuring 1.9 on the Richter scale. Another one measuring 2.3 on the Richter scale. Enormous pipeline links. September 26th, Dow Jones Industrial Average plunges into a bear market. September 27th, the results of the referendums are announced. Russia officially annexed those areas. September 28th, Ian comes ashore on the west coast of Florida. Could be one of the costliest natural disasters in our history. Yeah. September 30th, the annexes become official, I guess, and they are part of Russia. Russia sends October 1st. Russia sends a fleet of bombers to a military base where a substantial number of nuclear weapons are stored. October 2nd, Ukrainian forces recapture a key city of Lyman from the Russians. All this time, you've got Russia subtly threatening nuclear war.
Yeah.
With interesting verbiage there. For months you had the Ukraine steadily losing ground to the Russians. Now all of a sudden, the Ukraine has gained back as much ground in 1 month as Russia took in 5 months. And now the momentum of the war is shifted because there's been an infusion of highly trained troops. The Ukraine has held on long enough. They started training these troops. Now the weapons that the West is sending them is starting to build up. The new troops are really
That's good that their weapons are building up as ours are depleted.
Yeah, and the new troops are well equipped. A lot of them can speak fluent English. Now the Russians are losing. They've decided they better mobilize more troops. Young men all over Russia are being called in. And I saw on PBS this morning, sent into the fight completely untrained.
Sad.
Yes. And they've got this stuff on YouTube. They're having trouble validating, is this really real? But you're seeing video after video after video after video of these young guys that have to bring their own sleeping bags. They have no training, and they're being sent into the fight. Both sides keep escalating this proxy war in the Ukraine. There's lots of talk on Russian television about a nuclear conflict. Russian media has shown a chilling consequence of mushroom clouds in anticipation of nuclear conflict amid calls for Putin to take drastic measures to win in the Ukraine. And many Russian leaders are calling for tactical nukes. And so...
Yeah, can I just say something? Because the UK's Daily Mail reported Monday that a pro-Russian channel on the Telegram app posted a clip Sunday of military vehicles and armored personnel carriers moving through central Russia. It's called their nuclear military train. And it's reportedly on the move, spotted, loaded down with weaponry. So they are prepared. I mean, they're putting it out there.
They're at least mobilizing.
Yes,
whether
they
or
are.
not they're getting ready to implement it, that doesn't really matter. They are mobilized.
And there's Putin put this guy in Chechnya, pinned a few medals on him, and he's a war fanatic. And he's in charge of Chechnya, called on Putin to contemplate declaring martial law in the border territories and using low-yield nuclear weapons. And so if Russia decide to use tactical nukes to give them an advantage, I don't believe that Biden would use them against the Russians. I just don't believe it, because he's been, look at Afghanistan, look at everything he's done. Basically he hasn't done anything. The only thing he's done is made the Taliban the 26th biggest military in the world. And so I don't think he would use them. But it is a serious crisis. And something about the White House, he is allowing guys like Jake Sullivan, Anthony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, who want war, who seem to want war, in his ear.
Yeah.
And
his weakness really is just enabling the war hawks underneath him to really strategize and make whatever threats they want to.
Some analysts believe we're on the brink of nuclear war. And
can I say something about that?
Yeah.
Because on October 5th, the United States Department of Health and Human Services purchased $290 million worth of nuclear emergency drugs. That's what the United States is purchasing right now.
Interesting.
Yeah. These little pills you can take that if the nuclear bombs go off, it sucks it in so it doesn't harm you, I think is what I kind of read about
Iodine.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
And this, we're not trying to scare you.
No.
But this is why
aware.
The Bible says, the podcast opens with a scripture, you have to be a watchman on the walls. Even in Revelation, to the letters to the 7 churches, to the church of Sardis, it says you have to watch. It says, calls this church dead, right? D-E-A-D, dead. And it says you have to pull yourself out of this by watching.
Yeah.
What? In Peter, what is this? 5:8. Is it 2 Peter 5:8 or 1 Peter 5:8? Be watchful, be vigilant. The devil, he's like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. And if you're not watchful, you don't know what's going on. And therefore, you do not know how to pray. And and our leaders are assuring us that Vladimir Putin will never actually nuke us. I just wonder, how is the United States how do we sit out Ezekiel 38? You got the whole world in that. And I always wondered, is it something that disables us?
Right.
Are we disabled at that time? And I can tell you, one nuclear bomb hitting our country would disable us at that point.
Or there's some other things that I've seen about that is, with Russia, or some people say, I don't want to get ahead of our news, but some people talk about how the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline might actually be a show of strength by Russia to say, hey, we can come at any sort of utility, because all of the internet connections in the world run underneath the oceans from continent to continent. And part of that could be saying, hey, world, if you mess with us, we can disrupt communications all over the world just by blowing up those communication lines. Which, I mean, that's a show of strength, and that's like willing to cut the U.S. off. Obviously, we still have satellite communications, but that would drastically limit communications around the world if the internet is severed.
Good point.
And I don't want to, I pray for Joe Biden every day. I name him by name.
Yeah.
Because the Bible says to pray for your leaders if you want to be at peace.
Yeah.
And so, but at times it seems like, that he is in a highly advanced state of mental decline. I mean,
it seems like
they ignore it.
They ignore it.
They were all over Trump for every little thing that he did. Is he mentally cognizant enough to be president? And you look at this guy, and then on top of that, on the other side, you have Putin, who Condoleezza Rice had 12 personal meetings with, said he's crazy. He has gone crazy, and word coming out of there is he's not physically right. That he's got
so he's no longer
symptoms,
walking around with his shirt off.
Some type of symptoms.
He's driven by something that doesn't make sense.
But my dad says, like, the hook in the jaw. That is God just.
It reminds me of Rome. How could the biggest, the strongest nation in the world, and that get along having a crazy guy run it?
Right.
But so many times Rome would have these crazy Nero, Claudius.
Right.
These guys were nuts.
They were absolutely nuts.
And it just kind of reminds me, we're in that time here.
Well, I was also thinking about how when the Israelites were trying to leave Egypt, and time and time again, Pharaoh hardened his heart towards God. There's things that happen where it doesn't make sense, or they just go against sense and go, "Hey, God's already trying to tell you, let us go." It's wild how stuff can happen like that.
We're in the third part of the Millennium, our series on the Millennium. And
welcome.
Listen, I mean, we could be seeing this here. What we're talking about here after the tribulation, in my opinion, by 2033, 2034. Okay? And the Battle of Armageddon has already happened. All right, at this point. You have the devil being bound for 1,000 years. They have 1,000 years of Christ ruling on earth, and we talked a lot about that in detail. We left off at Revelation 20, verse 7, we talked about last week, and we do have news to come back to.
Yeah.
All right. Two more segments. We talked about last week, for 1,000 years, while Satan is bound in the pit of hell, people will be shielded from temptation, and sin, sickness, disease will not exist. People will live to be hundreds of years old, and there will be a population explosion. But as we said last week, why is God releasing the devil after 1,000 years? And we left off at Revelation 20, verse 7. When the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. God is no respecter of persons. And those born during the millennium will have to be tested like everyone else. He will be opened. Hell will be opened one more time. And listen. It's just, he's fair, right? And he would be a dictator. Do you understand?
Yeah.
If he didn't do this, because no one would be left ultimately with a choice. And so we pick up in verse 8, Revelation 20, verse 8, and shall go out to deceive the nations. This is the devil, which are in the four quarters of the earth. Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle. The number whom as the sand of the sea. So there is a frame of thinking that God is releasing Satan again, it seems to some commentators believe, to rid the earth of all the rebels. And you can say, well, how can there be rebels on earth after 1,000 years of reign, right, of Jesus in charge? But just like Adam and Eve were seduced, he's going to deceive man again.
Yeah.
And even though the world would have had 1,000 years under a perfect government with exemption of all forms of suffering,
right,
there will still be men whose hearts does not get won by God. There would still be bad things going on in the millennium. Verse 8 is indicating great numbers of men will be deceived. You say, how can that happen if there's no devil, right? Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked.
Yeah.
Talking about the heart of man. And really what this is proving out here is we don't even really need a devil, right?
Oh, right.
This is talking about the heart of man. A lot of commentators believe this Gog and Magog mentioned here in Revelation 20 are way different than Gog and Magog of Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39, which we've done 2 podcasts on. The Gog and Magog of Ezekiel include parts of Asia and northern Europe, but the Gog and Magog spoken of by the Apostle John in Revelation 20 embraces all nations. The Bible calls it the 4 quarters of the earth. There will be people coming from the 4 quarters of the earth. And looking at that phrase in verse 8, to gather them for battle in number, they are like the sand on the seashore. So here we are again. You got
1,000 years later. 1,000 years later, all of the generations that separate, seeing Jesus come in the second coming. And all of a sudden, that 1,000 years later, a lot of these kids weren't there. They don't understand it. They don't, they haven't been a part of that. They don't believe what the old stories were.
It's no different than we're going to get into that. But I listen a lot to the book of Judges, which a lot of people think I do Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. I just play it in my ear all night, right? And Judges, those kids, like the Millennium, they did not go through all that in the wilderness, right?
Yeah.
And so with Joshua, they conquered those lands.
Yeah.
And then within 40 years, all those people's kids were like, they were worshiping idols.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. You can see the power of God, and it doesn't matter.
Yes.
And the Bible says that over and over. And we'll get into that in the second phase of the teaching, but we're in the second phase of news here, of 3 phases of news. Poland distributes iodine pills as fear grow over this Ukraine nuclear plant. And so Poland, concerned about fighting around Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, has distributed iodine tablets to regional fire departments to give people in the event of radioactive exposure. Iodine is considered a way of protecting the body against conditions such as thyroid cancer in case of radioactive exposure.
Yeah.
And you know, the Russians were shelling this site with missiles. Europe's biggest nuclear power plant has damaged buildings close to its 6 reactors. Power cables are cut, risking a nuclear catastrophe that would affect neighboring countries. And Russia and Ukraine are blaming each other. You know, Russia's military has fired 9 missiles on this city, hitting a hotel, a power station. Zaporizhzhia is about 31 miles from the nuclear plant that has the same name. Nuclear threats continue as Russia spotted flying nuclear bombers. Russia is spotted flying nuclear bombers near Finland. Okay? There's certain kind of planes that carry these bombs, and these planes have been in the air. Israeli intelligence firm confirms satellite image has detected an irregular presence of Russian Tu-160 and Tu-95 strategic bombers deployed at this airbase, Oleyna, Oleyna airbase near Finland. And you have President Zelensky boasting on CBS Face the Nation that Washington is providing him with a whopping $1.5 billion per month.
Per month.
For the state coffers as the country piles up a large wartime deficit.
That's a lot of money a month that we're just giving to them.
$1.5 billion per month.
Think if they just put that back into our own economy,
right?
What we would see with people.
Well, yeah.
I honestly don't know what to think about that.
We're shipping money to do whatever they want, really.
Right. They're not tracing
whether or not it's going to this effort or not, and we're shipping millions of barrels of oil to China, you know. It feels like a lot of really bad management of our nation's resources.
I totally agree.
It just makes it feel helpless with our government on a regular basis.
That's our tax dollars.
Right.
And, you know, another story out of Reuters, North Korea fires a missile at Japan. Japanese government was telling citizens to shelter where you are as this missile is coming at them. It wound up flying over Japan. Okay, I saw this morning, PBS got pretty good news, that they fired 6 just this week.
Wow.
Right? And
isn't the amount of activity, though, from all these countries just astounding when you really think about it? When you start to connect all the dots and you just look, just everything you read, that's crazy.
Well, it's interesting because it reminds me a little bit of World War II, where the United States was split. There was 2 fronts that we were fighting.
Right.
And the United States can't take its eyes off of Japan, or not Japan, but China and North Korea. Can't take its eyes off of Russia and the Ukraine situation. Who knows what else is out there? Iran, yeah. So there's so much that has to be kept an eye on. You have to be really steely to not lose your nerve. But it's like to protect freedom around the world, to protect free people like Taiwan, we have to stay present in that area. We got to stay present in the Israeli Middle East area, and we have to stay present near Ukraine and Russia, just to not let them just have their way.
On a local, we're kind of looking at what's going on in Minnesota. You've got 2 top candidates, and this kind of says a lot of the argument nationwide. What these candidates are arguing about, I thought was, it's the argument nationwide. Top candidates for Minnesota Secretary of State, and so, Simon calls voter ID laws draconian. He's the guy that's in there. the top candidates for Minnesota Secretary of State, they squared off in a debate on WCCO radio. And he says, my mission as Secretary of State has been to protect the freedom to vote for every eligible Minnesotan. I've been proud to do that work with fairness, impartiality, integrity, leading to results that we can really be proud of. And so he attacked Kim Crockett. He calls her vision dark for our democracy. He says she is motivating by disturbing hyper-partisanship and increasingly bizarre conspiracy theories. And this is how they couch you, right? The minute you question anything, right. Her extremism is unfortunate and it's disqualifying.
Right. Yep.
It criticizes her doubting the 2020 election, which I don't even know if we're allowed to be talking about at this point. But I'm just reporting
I'll do it.
What you could have seen on the radio.
Well, the New York Times just did an exposing
but
piece.
But we're not allowed to say anything. Crockett said same-day voter registration.
I was going to.
She wanted to.
You know, same-day voter registration.
You can, you guys.
You can go in.
You can already do it.
And register.
Yes, that's what we're saying.
And vote.
Yeah.
And she's saying there's no way that they can check out if that person is legal to vote.
Right.
No, because you're doing it the day of. How are you going to do a background check on them?
I've done it in Minnesota.
Have I.
And I just had to go in with my brother-in-law, and he's like, yeah, that's him.
Oh, so you did have to go in with somebody?
That's the one I did it one time. Another time after I had moved, I had to bring in utility bills. That's what they said you have to have of your new residence.
So you could bring in a person and they could just verify.
Right.
So what if I didn't know you and you're like, can you verify me?
It doesn't matter as long as they'll say, oh, do you know him? And you sign it and you go, yep.
But can I just say one thing? You need an ID for everything. You need an ID to get on an airplane. You need an ID when you go to another country.
Yep.
And can I say one thing about the IDs? You can't even get on an airplane anymore with just license. You have to have a special license. It costs $100. It's a ridiculous. You have to have.
If your state doesn't have the
no, the real ID.
Yeah,
no,
the real
I'm saying,
ID.
but have you gotten your real ID?
I do.
It is a ridiculous process to get your real ID. You have to have a W-2.
Yep.
I know all these things. Social Security card.
I don't have it, do I?
No, you do have
that license.
That's why you went in with your passport. But listen, if you don't have the real ID, you have to have a passport just to get on an airplane.
Right.
Wait, just to get on an airplane, but to vote for the biggest thing in America, you don't have to have any form of identification.
Right. It's a form of security.
But for me to go from here to, I won't go to California, Texas, I would have to show my passport to even get on the airplane.
But to vote.
No, you can show up that day.
And it's all about security for the airplanes and the travel. That's why you need an ID. But for voting, you don't need anything.
Right.
Nothing.
Well, and the problem, it is very problematic if anybody that has a mind that works through what they're actually saying is they say that voter ID is racist.
Of course they do.
Voter ID is racist. And
can I say
obviously
one thing about
the problem is that you're saying that someone who is a minority doesn't have the ability to have ID.
Right.
Which is a slap in the face for any self-respecting person.
Well, I did listen to a podcast, I don't know who it was a long time ago, but they said even in rural areas, to print off something at like a FedEx, you have to show them an ID for them to even print something off your computer.
Right.
So that's not, their theory is.
The Republican was asked about, also look at this, her skepticism of the 2020 election, which specifically, she had a June comment where her comments were made, she was criticizing the media because they were calling her an election denier. That's their new word.
They're just labeling people with all these
If you
words.
heard that, she says, if you heard of that phrase, well, that's what they call me in the left-wing press, in the mainstream media. You're looking at your election denier-in-chief, is what she said. Isn't this absurd? They're trying to shut us all up, right? Mm-hmm. And so the candidates disagreed on the ID issue. And the Simon guy is like, well, seniors in our lives are the ones that would be impacted by those kind of draconian laws. I thought, doesn't most senior citizens have an ID?
Absolutely.
What stops a senior citizen from getting an ID?
What's interesting? In Minnesota, to get a library card, you have to have a photo ID or proof of your date of birth.
A book.
To
check out a book.
But to have a say in our democracy, our republic, and our democracy, or democratic republic, you don't need one.
And isn't that funny? Because the government owns the libraries. Right. It's run by the city of...
Yeah.
Or the counties, I think.
On Simon's watch here, Democrats let illegal immigrants and felons vote in precinct caucuses. Yeah. And he and his party opposed common sense measures like photo ID for elections. Why? Because you can cheat.
Yeah.
Even though they required it at their own convention, because they don't want to let people in there.
Yeah.
Right? Minnesota GOP Chairman David Hand said after the debate, Minnesotans deserve better, and recent polls show this race is neck and neck.
But we have a lot of close races right now in Minnesota, and
we don't know, though. You don't know, because, I mean, I if somebody calls me and says, "What are you voting?" or shows up at my door, I don't know that I'm going to tell them at this point.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say...
It's not their business. There was a day
you are registered
where it was your own business what you voted, right?
Well, can I tell you, you are registered, because we had someone come and knock on a door, and she's a candidate running. She's like, "Oh, all the Republicans are blue, all the Democrats are red." Wait, is it the other way around? Okay. And she's like, "Look at all the dots." And she showed me her map and was like, "These are all the people registered." And then she said, "Your neighbor." And I was like, she's not a Republican. I don't know why it came up that way. She actually ran for, I don't know, something on a Democratic side. But I'm just saying, it does show up with your map and like who you vote for. So they do track that.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Listen,
even though
I'm having problems with all my stuff here. I need to get...
It's good stuff.
I need to figure out a better organizational progress.
In your stuff.
I just had another minor.
Well, you keep taking your paperclip off too early.
I know. And so...
Paper clips are keeping you on the...
Just put them up here, the extra ones.
We were talking about the Millennium and how possibly there's going to be 1 billion or 2 people that are unsaved that enter into the Millennium. Maybe even more than 2 billion people, okay? At least hundreds of millions, okay? And then on top of that, there's going to be a population explosion. And so, listen, in one scripture, Isaiah 65:20 says, "There shall no more be in it an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who dies prematurely." No more. No more. Okay? This is the millennium. Yeah. For the child shall die 100 years old. You're considered, if you die at 100 years old, you're considered a child in a sense. And the sinner who dies when only 100 years old shall be thought only a child. If you die at 100 in the millennium, they're thinking, "Oh, you died way
too early.
You died way too early." And the idea is, if a person hasn't accepted a Christ by the time they're 100 years old or more than likely they won't ever accept him. All right? Because of the long life in the millennium, there will be hundreds of millions, if not billions, of babies born to these people that are coming out of the tribulation, right? During this particular time. And so...
But just think, you live through the tribulation, and then you see Jesus come back. Wouldn't that just win you after you just saw pure evil? I mean,
we're getting
obviously
to this.
Not. Oh, we are?
Ask that question again.
All right.
Right now.
This is what the Jews are for. They're going to evangelize these people, right? They're going to re-evangelize the world at this point. Yeah, after 7 years of the Antichrist. And I just think, the mark of the beast people, they're done, right?
They are done.
They're fried.
They're done.
Yeah,
I mean, so that tells you...
Those locusts.
Yes, all that
locusts.
stuff.
Some of these people going into the millennium will accept Christ. But listen, and some won't. Some won't.
Right.
With their own volition. On their own volition. They'll have to...
I haven't seen enough yet. I'll make a decision later.
Who is this Jesus guy? Right? Oh, we got a world leader? Well, you just had a world leader. How'd that go? Right? The Antichrist.
Sucked.
And so they'll have to follow the laws of God. They'll have to obey the laws of God. There'll be different laws.
So they'll get mad at all those
And there'll be laws. And guess what? There'll still be people breaking the laws. All right? Because man, it doesn't need a devil to murder each other.
Right.
I trust me. When Satan is loosed after 1,000 years, there will still be as many unsaved on the earth, and they won't like their restrictions because there'll be a lot more restrictions under God. The only ones left on the earth will be God and man, both of those who have been resurrection, and those still that have corruptible flesh.
Right.
Okay?
Can you imagine if there's people that have glorified bodies and you have people that have unglorified bodies, and there's a real jealousy between the two?
I'm having a hard time just even as I'm talking
about
this, wrapping my head around all of this, but at least we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And going over the scriptures. Go ahead.
Nothing.
No, you're...
Go ahead.
Okay. Was it a hard question?
No, it was about the saints versus the Jews. I could see it was in your eyes.
So there's glorified and unglorified.
Resurrected. The saints that were killed in the tribulation will be raised.
I know, but here's my thing. But here's my thing. I don't understand about the saints. They made the decision in the tribulation to choose Jesus.
Yeah.
They made a choice.
Yeah.
So then they come back.
Resurrected bodies.
And they're
tribulation saints.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Okay.
Listen, they're not. I don't think.
So they're not part of.
I don't think they become part of the huge army.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be something if they did?
I'm just saying
they're
people
on the earth.
I don't know.
Right, but why are they on the earth?
There's going to be millions
of
tribulation saints murdered during the tribulation for not taking the mark. We went over that they are resurrected in the millennium. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And we know that they are on earth, ruling and reigning. I do not think that they are going to be swayed. But wow, wasn't Lucifer swayed?
Absolutely.
Lucifer himself was swayed.
But think some of those people, fine. Okay, just let me say something.
Go for it.
You have a resurrected saint, and you were, let's just say were friends with that person during that time, and they died, and they came back, and now they're trying to rule and reign over you. I mean, I can see where people are rebellious.
This is my point.
Yeah.
Is it's not going to be, Jesus is ruling.
It's not heaven.
But no, it's not heaven. And God doesn't, even though there's not disease, there's no devil, God, and we know God doesn't tempt towards sin.
Mm-hmm.
So sin exists. It's a humane issue. Sadly, even with the worldly system and the devil gone, the inherited sin taint of corruptible flesh will be strong enough to draw people away. When the devil is released after 1,000 years, he will not have to look hard to find those who are ready to follow him in rebellion and think that they're going to overthrow the rule of Jesus. And this just proves that just because you eliminate the devil, it's not as simple as just changing your environment. Something is wrong with the very nature. And I think God's almost trying to prove something here.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with the very nature of man's heart. Rebellion is in man's nature. You have Satan running a repeat battle of Armageddon, and he will try one more time to become greater than God. So he pulls probably some of the descendants of the enemies of Israel that maybe made it into the millennium, in Hal Lindsey's opinion. That's end-time specialist Hal Lindsey. Gog and Magog, who were born during the millennium, maybe they were part of that Gog and Magog, and surround Jerusalem. Okay?
Yep.
So you have to wonder, how, if Jesus is ruling earth, how do these people still reject God?
I don't know, but it actually gives me a little more empathy towards Adam now that you just read that whole statement.
Yes.
Because you sit there and you're like, oh, it was the devil. Oh, but you just read.
You guys, you see it in the Bible.
I know, but I'm saying you just read man's heart. And so that helps me with Adam.
You saw the Israelites.
Yeah.
The Israelites saw the Nile River turn to blood.
Yeah.
They saw all those plagues. They saw what happened to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
They saw the Red Sea part.
They had to pass through it.
If you walked on the bottom sands of the Dead Sea, looking at two walls of water, and then you watch the ocean close up on the most powerful army in the world at that time.
I can see where people still question that stuff after seeing
and
all that.
Then
I'm just saying there are going to be people.
They saw a pillar of fire miraculously leading them around the desert, every day.
A pillar during the day to give them shade.
Yes. And what did they do the first time?
Water from a rock.
Yeah,
that was
water
sweet.
feeding 2.5 million people flowing out of a rock.
How amazing.
And the first time they got the chance, Moses goes up the mountain. They are left with Aaron for 40 days. Moses
Poor
goes
Aaron.
Moses goes up to get, he's part of the whole deal.
Well, I know,
Moses goes up the mountain to get 10
Aaron.
commandments. They create a golden calf and start worshiping it. And many scholars believe Moses came down to a bunch of orgies.
Right. Yeah.
Poor Moses.
No, he broke them.
The desert is terrible.
He broke the.
Moses broke the
words of God.
and had to go back up the mountain to get 10.
Sorry,
10
God.
Well, yeah.
Oh, so there's temper there.
The question is, was
like
it
a
the
Tom
same?
Brady moment.
Was it the same tablet?
Yeah.
Was it, or was there something different?
He left it down there so they could all see it, and then he walked.
No,
back
do you
up
know what I
in.
mean?
He had to go do a whole new
God,
tablet.
Did God have to do
Did he
a
write new
different
laws?
set of things?
Oh, that's a great point.
Instead of being
That's a great point.
what Jesus gave was love God, love your neighbor, and everything falls underneath those
Never
two
thought about that before.
categories, or did they become 10 laws?
That's
You
a
know what I
great.
mean?
Well, I
That's,
think
wow,
that's-
that's a deep thought. And so we are in our last segment of the news here, and we're going to do one more teaching on the Millennium here. The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to hear a challenge of federal prosecutions for internet and social media companies, a move that could significantly shape the future of social media. One case, Gonzalez versus Google,
GVG.
is set to consider whether tech platforms' recommendation algorithms are protected from lawsuits under a commonly invoked legal shield tech companies have used to take down other suits. So people,
of course,
Gonzalez is suing them, I believe, over who they decide to throw into the algorithms.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
shadow banning,
Right.
shadow banning.
Right.
Like
You've
how
heard
much
of that?
how much press you get.
Right.
They control how many people
Yeah.
see
Is this
what
a
you're doing.
censoring
There was-
of their First
Yes.
Amendment rights, but also it can be an antitrust type thing as well, to be able to give free access to one set of people, one set of businesses, and to basically shut down other businesses. Right.
And Twitter is in a lawsuit that with the name TAAMNEH will decide whether social media companies can be sued for allegedly aiding and abetting an act of terrorism. This is when platforms have hosted unrelated user content that expresses support for the group behind the violence, i.e. the Taliban.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
They still have their Twitter accounts.
Yes.
Right.
And
certain political figures in the United States still don't.
Exactly.
Although Mr. Elon Musk came back to the table and is going to go through with the purchase of Twitter as of reported yesterday.
And we'll see if that changes anything, right?
I don't know.
Maybe he
We'll
wanted
see.
to. Maybe he wanted to get rid of that deal because he
Right.
saw he couldn't really control
Right.
what they're doing. Right?
Yep.
We'll see.
But
Because it's not fair. It's not freedom of speech.
No.
On the social media, on Instagram, Twitter,
it's not. Can I say
Facebook.
one thing?
It's not freedom of speech.
Robbie
Okay.
Starbuck, who was running
Yeah.
for Congress
Right.
in Tennessee, just posted because when he was running, his name miraculously fell off the ticket.
Yep.
He tried to sue, I don't know who it was, to get his name back on the ticket. So if you lived in Tennessee in that district, you had to handwrite his name. And well, if you don't see someone on
Right.
the ticket, you kind of like,
You go like, well, that's not.
yeah, and
they're
so
not legit.
you'd skip it. But he just posted the other day that the Department of Homeland Security coordinated with a group called the Election Integrity Partnership to censor Biden's opponent. Obviously, he's a Republican. And he said he was censored while he ran for Congress. Biden's regime paid EIP groups $12 million plus to censor him.
Isn't
What?
it? It's really interesting that
This-
you have so many organizations that have the name of like Election Integrity
Yes.
Alliance or whatever it's called.
Election
Integrity.
Can I read
that
who they
is
are?
absolutely not for election integrity.
No, they're cheating.
Stanford Internet Observatory, University of Washington Center for an Informed Public. They're an informed public. Atlantic Council's DFR Lab, analytics firm Graphica.
Cheaters.
And his screenshots below show the grant money each of them received from Biden's administration. It does add up to that.
Listen, okay, on another note, Bill Clinton makes a statement about all the border crisis and states that he says there is a limit to how many migrants U.S. can take without disruption. And so, wow, you got the Bill stepping out. George Soros Open Society Foundation puts millions behind pro-amnesty, pro-illegal immigration groups that advocate for unfettered mass immigration and amnesty for illegal immigrants. And it's funny, and we can't even get a guy up here from the Dominican Republic to work here.
We're working through the government for a visa.
We're trying to get a green card for an educated guy, and he gets turned down and to work in our Spanish church. And you've got billions or millions crossing, crossing the border.
Can I say one thing about those immigrants? DeSantis did a press conference yesterday because there's looters in Florida. Because of the hurricane. And they said 3 out of every 4 person they're arresting for looting is an illegal immigrant. 3 out of every 4.
DeSantis said that?
Yes.
Okay.
At his
That's
press
the governor.
Ron.
That's the governor of Florida.
Super Ron.
And so
Super Ron.
Texas is awarding $307 million in contracts for 14 miles new border wall in Del Rio and Rio Grande Valley.
They got it themselves. Way to go, Texas.
Yes. Abortion is now an economic issue. According to the famous AOC.
She's so great.
You know who AOC is?
Alejandro Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes, she states that abortion is an economic issue because raising kids forces parents to work more against their will. Satanic Temple sues Indiana over abortion bans. Yeah, you've got the Satanists getting involved in this.
You can't sacrifice children if it's illegal.
Yes. Claims it violates their religious rights to sacrifice children.
And President Biden tweeted out to them, after the Satanic Temple goes after abortion bans, this is what Biden tweeted back. A national ban on abortion means that even if you live in a state where extremist Republican officials aren't running the show, your right to choose is still at risk. They want the right to choose for every woman in every state in this country. They want it gone. That's what Biden tweets about the Satanic Temple.
Yeah, if you are concerned about whether or not
Republicans, that's what he says.
If you are concerned about whether or not abortion is a moral issue, if you are siding with the Satanic Temple on abortion, you are siding with the wrong side.
And it's just as concerning that our president is tweeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We have the president of the United States tweeting at the Satanic Temple.
And you know that it is not his. It's not his fingers that are tweeting.
Well, no, but it's his account.
It's his account.
He's still responsible.
His account,
for it.
but it's again those people that he has allowed to be around him that are pulling the strings are obviously anti-Jesus and anti-life.
Can I say one more thing about the abortion thing? My kids obviously watch YouTube and they're on Instagram, and I don't know what they were talking about, but my youngest son, Wrigley, was on it the other day, and all of a sudden I hear, Tyler Kistner is against abortion. He doesn't want women to have abortion at any stage.
Correct.
And Wrigley's just like, all they're coming at this guy about is abortion and his stance on abortion, and Governor Walz against Governor Jensen about abortion. Yeah. So the only thing these people are touting in front of everyone is abortion. Hey, women, you're going to lose your rights of abortion. If somebody rapes you, you're going to lose your rights, blah, 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 blah.
Well, and obviously this is because they don't have a platform to run from because of issues, because the left has done a terrible job over the last 2 years having power and doing good things for Americans.
Right.
And so they don't have a platform to run from where it comes to issues. So they have to go at something that gets people riled up, like abortion.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, the economy, the stock market.
They could go after all that, getting gas prices down, helping people with food, nothing.
No,
they're just attacking the people who are against abortion.
But listen,
against families.
Back to the last part of the teaching here. war is one of Satan's favorite things to do. And at this point, we have him in the millennium surrounding Jerusalem.
Nothing.
Revelation 20, verse 9. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about in the beloved city and fire. Okay, so this is his army that numbers like the sand.
It's a lot of people.
So the beloved city,
and
is this Jerusalem?
Yes, fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them that quick. So this gives us a picture of Satan and his army once again coming against Jerusalem because Satan hates that place with a passion. Yeah. There's some scholars that claim this is the same battle that describes Ezekiel 38, but that is totally incorrect. There's no similarity between these two wars. Satan is personally himself leading this army.
I wonder what he looks like.
I'm
Satan?
sure he'll take on a...
Isn't he supposed to be really good looking and he has a really good voice?
Right. I mean, he was a worship leader in heaven, right? That was the guy who was...
I'm sure he'll...
So he wears skinny jeans and has a great haircut.
Angels...
We don't know what the style looks like
can take on a human form. They can.
I'm sure he's
because
all
it says in the Bible. It tells you if you're entertaining a human, right?
Yeah.
If you're entertaining, be careful that it's not an angel.
Unaware.
And so I'm just saying, we don't know what he's going to look like, but he's going to be leading this army. It doesn't look like the people of God even mobilize. Satan gets his mighty army under the leadership of generals, and just like that, heaven literally devours his army, probably millions in that army, and it's done in a moment. Yes, God is love, but also know Bible calls God a consuming fire. The only thing that stops that attack on Jerusalem is fire from heaven. Again, you don't see God mobilizing an army. During Jesus' millennial reign, he reigns from Jerusalem. It really looks like the same way God destroyed the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, takes out Satan's army. And Revelation 20:10, the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. So Satan at this point is out of chances. His career's at an end. He's thrown back into the lake of fire one final time, where you can find the Antichrist and the false prophet. Some Christians say they will be annihilated, but hell is a place where you experience torment forever and ever.
Well, he has no one else to torment, so he just constantly torments these same people over and over again.
Well, I think he's tormented too.
I think he's also tormented.
Yeah, he's just
because he didn't win.
He's not chilling down there.
He's a prideful guy.
Yeah, I think the common depiction of the devil is in hell and it's fire, and he likes it that way. But I don't think he's going to be enjoying the lake of fire.
I don't think so
it says, it's very clear.
Yeah.
The devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever.
Because he didn't win.
That's talking about the devil, the beast,
yeah,
and the false prophet. Tormented. Okay, so Satan deserves it, and the justice of God demands it, and you can see that in Matthew 25:41. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. So we do have a plan here. As we close out the millennium, next week, we're going to talk about the next thing that happens, which is the great white throne judgment. All right? Then I want to walk you through a timeline, probably the week after that, of Revelation, just to put all these things together.
Lonaiah looks concerned.
No, because remember when you were growing up and there was the great white throne judgment, and you didn't know enough, and you thought your whole life was going to be put on a screen. Every bad thing you did,
some people preach that,
was going to be put up there, and you were like, okay, I stole my sister's Barbie and I lied about it. Now my mom's going to see that.
Some people made a lot of money on that kind of preaching.
Yeah, they did.
And
but
they
I'm
were
saying
wrong.
You used to, that was like, that made you
want
to be good.
They've been to this church, some people.
Yeah.
They've been to this church.
It is.
That's why I sighed, because I was like, all those.
Anyone who is honest enough with themselves knows that their own heart can be wicked and evil, and whatever can happen. And if you get judged on anything that even has passed through your mind that you even considered it feels like you're naked in front of your laid bare in front of everyone.
And everyone's going to watch and be like, oh, that explains it.
That's not what this is. Obviously, we'll talk about it.
We're going to talk about the Great White Throne Judgment.
We'll answer that.
Then, and the week after that, I'm going to walk you through a timeline of Revelation just to kind of bring everything from the rapture through the millennium. It's about 27 points that you can pull out of Revelation in kind of in order. Yeah. What we think, what theologians. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a prophecy expert. But I read about, now I think I'm up to 9 of these guys.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of them. You can pretty much put this thing in a timeline. And I can't wait to do that. But next week we're going to go into the Great White Throne Judgment.
Would you say that there's like overlapping of bowls and trumpets and
these guys don't have that in their timeline. They're
But I thought we talked where there was like one where like one right after the other, because you have to do the 7 and then you do the 7 and then you do the 7.
So there's no overlapping.
But if you look at the plagues that happened to the Egyptians, they didn't overlap. They just were each a little section.
And that is this stuff that happens in these judgments is very similar to the plagues.
Oh yeah.
And so there's the judgments themselves are one thing, but there's a lot of other stuff. It's not just the judgments, right?
Right.
It's a timeline. There's 27 different things in there that I want to point out that we can pretty much put in, but that's in 2 weeks. You pray for our nation.
Yep.
And you can take authority for even push back for our governor, the president. We don't know where they stand spiritually necessarily, but you have power, you have authority. And the Bible says to do that in the New Testament. It's the only way that if you want peace, you need to pray for your leaders, right? Mm-hmm. And so thank you so much for tuning in to the Final Hour podcast. We will see you next week. Pray for Lonaiah. She's going to see her son in college. Who's playing baseball in college, and she's going to go down there this weekend. And please do subscribe to the Final Hour podcast. Thank you so much for viewing or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. God bless you. And remember, you can simply give our website, www.thefinalhourpodcast.com, all one word, no spaces. And you go right to the website. Thank you so much. People say they can't find us.
It's there.
That's all you got to do is type that into your search.
The people who can't find us aren't hearing us right now.
.com.
Okay.
Or you can just search. You can search that on your browser. You can.
Help your friends. Well. Okay.
I've actually had people tell me they found me once. Right.
And they never found you again?
Yes. So
maybe we should have a podcast weekend where we're just out there and we just subscribe people. We'll help you.
But thank you so much. God bless you. You're in our prayers every day. Please keep us in your prayers. Thank you.